Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
I'll tell you where businesses screw up.
Yeah.
Is they talk about themselves a lot and they don't think about their customers. We need to think about who our customers are and what they want.
Yeah.
You know, what are their pain points? What are they trying to solve?
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Well, welcome back, everybody, to a wonderful and fantastic and exciting podcast episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. And today I'm joined by none other than the fantastic, most fantastic.
Or fastest.
You are the fastest, most fantastic, supercalifragilistic, supercalifragilistic.
If you say it slow, it doesn't work.
Yeah, expicalifragilistic.
You have to say it fast.
I've got to go back and watch Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
We got Lisa LaCour in the house.
Yep.
Founder, CEO at the Vault Collective.
Yes.
Come to New Orleans to bring all that wonderful expertise that you've had in your life to really make an impact here in New Orleans. And that's why today we're talking all about, in specific, bringing your brand / business to market and what that means. So excited to talk about that
yes.
with you, you know.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
I mean, diving right in, before we even get started with that, I think, New Orleans, we're a little bit slow. What does even taking something to market, taking your business to market mean? What does that mean when businesses hear that?
It's a big question, right? It means different things to a lot of companies. I mean, we can talk about, all kinds of different companies, right? You have restaurants, you have tech products, or you have companies like the Vault Collective, right? Which is a service-oriented business. So it all means different things for different people. I would say that there are a couple of key components that you need to think about. It also, impacts the stage of your business. Do you have a product that's actually in market? Do you need to figure out how to take it to market? Or do you need customers? Do you need different types of product features and functionalities because you've had the product and you understand that there's specific needs that your customers have and or your customers need and you may not have, so you need to pivot or iterate. There's a lot of different things that you need to think about when you're kind of like setting yourself up for success to take a product into a market.
And I think that's definitely the definition that I wanted people to hear in the sense that, because when I hear taking it to market without knowing about it, it almost sounds like, oh, well, this is only for startups. But lots of businesses are in a position where they're really, at a stage where they really need to be taking themselves to market in the sense of they really haven't done enough marketing. They haven't done enough to get their brand out there. And they're kind of stuck at this one place and it's time to grow.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I call the Vault Collective a business strategy and growth firm, not a marketing firm, right? Because sometimes it's not a marketing problem. Sometimes it's a sales problem, right? Sometimes it's a product problem. Sometimes it's a business operations problem, right? You really have to kind of tap into kind of the real essence of what your business challenges are, and then figure out how you're going to take that product or service into the market.
That's wild. And and part of that, and what you're talking about too, is I'm curious, what would you say are some of the biggest steps that businesses need to take, in whatever stage they're at, to get started with their product, taking it to market? What are the things they really need to be thinking about?
Well, one, like I just said, identify, what your problem is. And like I said, if it's we have an idea and we have a product, but we don't even know where to start. Or it's, we are now in the market, we need to grow and scale. So, those are, we'll kind of focus on those two primary things. A lot of it is, I'll tell you where businesses screw up.
Yeah.
Is they talk about themselves a lot. And they don't think about their customers. I actually had a client yesterday, where we're going through a new rebrand for them. We're talking about their website. We're talking about what they want on their front page. And they immediately started talking about their product, right? And I stopped them. And I said, hold on, you're taking the wrong perspective here. we need to think about who our customers are
Mm-hmm.
and what they want.
Yeah.
What are their pain points? What are they trying to solve? And then we need to like connect the dots between how our product or services help solve it for them. And then that's what our marketing communications are.
Yeah.
Our marketing communications comes from, what are the benefits that we're providing our customers, not what does our product do. And I see it all the time. If I may, the other thing companies do and screw up is they have a bunch of marketing gobbledygook, and you read it. We've all been there. You go to a customer's website or a business website, and you read it, and it looks beautiful. And there's a bunch of cool words on it, and you get to the bottom, and you go, so what do they do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To me, those are some of the kind of key fundamental elements. When you're going to kind of like marketing 101 stuff, a lot of it is, you really have to understand who your customer is. And when I say that, I don't mean, females 18 to 24. It's not a demographic thing. And sometimes it is. Right? I mean, if you have a female lifestyle brand, you do want to tap into that. But let's take that a step further.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like what is it that you're solving for them? Whether you're a makeup brand or a, business strategy firm.
Right.
What is it that you're solving for them? And really kind of tapping into not just their demographic, but really kind of like their ethos and what their like needs are, what their fears are, what their desires are, what their expectations are. You really got to kind of tap into that, figure out what that persona looks like, and then understand and identify how to communicate to them that it resonates.
Yeah. Being really intentional about the why this product or service exists in the first place.
Right. That's exactly right.
And being able to tell that and communicate it effectively.
Yeah. Yep.
And speaking of like effective communication in that sense is obviously the part that people struggle with is getting across, their product's why.
Yeah.
And, for you, how do you define that? And I guess like, how do you start to develop that?
Yeah. I mean, look, not to sound like an MBA, because by the way, I am not, but, the SWOT analysis, I think is a healthy exercise. And again, you don't have to go through, a 20-page rigmarole of like some sort of like big SWOT analysis, but this idea, like,
real quick.
I was about to say, so
she's getting to it. I was like, hey, don't you worry, she's coming for it.
So SWOT is SWOT, strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. Where the idea of this is to really kind of like go out and understand, who your customers are. We've identified that. Who your competitive set is, and we should dig into competitive set because sometimes it's not as black and white as you think it is. And then really start to kind of like understand for your own business what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, where the opportunities lie, and what are the threats to your business. And by like understanding those kind of three things, you really start tapping into where you should focus, right? From a kind of messaging and communication, but also from a product development and kind of like just general growth trajectory of the business.
Yeah, because it's like really figuring out all those different details. I think that's something that also a lot of people miss. I think a lot of people are just kind of like focused on, well, I just need to get this thing out there. I got to get this thing out there.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and look, sometimes you do, right? I mean, I come from, my background is a lot of like tech. I also worked at an Israeli tech company for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And I bring that up because one of the kind of things that came out when I was working there, I was a global CMO for an Israeli tech startup, and the Startup Nation came out, and that was written by, I used to know his name, Weiss, I think, Eric Weiss, I don't know, don't quote me on that, but he's Israeli, and he came from that world, and that he started the whole like MVP idea.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And so it's this idea of like MVP, your most valuable product, not your most valuable player.
Yeah.
It's the most valuable product. Right.
Yeah.
And the idea is you do kind of have to get your MVP out there because you don't want to like you don't want to spend 2 years building something only to put it out in market and realize that, the big use case was that small little feature you decided to throw in at the end. And you really need to like go out with your MVP and understand how people use it, to really start kind of like understanding how to position your product. So I don't want to say that, that's definitely, you definitely have to kind of go out and iterate and figure out what the opportunity is. However, you do need kind of like a starting line. You need to, before you do that, before you even build a product, right? But if you do have the product, you do want to like kind of understand where you're starting. That doesn't mean it has to be the be all end all. But you got to start somewhere, and then you have to be open, and you have to look at how people are using it, and you have to understand, the data and all of that sort of stuff, so you can continue to grow and iterate and move forward.
Because I guess too, and a lot of people when they hear this, from your perspective, what's the like, after all you've downloaded and all this data, you've kind of like, you've done all this, the SWOT analysis and stuff like that. How does that then impact, like, what should you be looking for to get, in a lot of ways, what people might call a value proposition? How do you get that? Like, well, one, what does all this tell you about that? And then two, how complex or simplistic does it need to be?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the simpler, the better, which is the hard part. Right. Like, there's a process that the Vault Collective goes through when we like onboard a client. We do a lot of positioning work for clients because that's where we need to start. Right. Like, what is your value proposition? How are you talking? What's your tone and your voice, and what messages are you trying to communicate? And it's interesting, as I say to the client up front, I was like, we're going to go through a big, long process to do this. Actually, I shouldn't say that because we do sprints. So we're going to go through a 2-week process to do this. We're going to ask you a ton of questions. We're going to go super deep into your business, and I'm going to deliver you a 1-pager. Right. And I feel like I need to caveat that because a lot of people are expecting these like big, pretty like decks, like fancy decks that like agencies would like present to clients. And our core deliverable is basically a 1-pager. Okay, maybe sometimes it's 2 or 3 pagers. But the idea there is because the hard part is editing. Right. So I can give you a pretty looking deck all day long, a 20-page deck about your company, and I can make you feel really good about yourself. Right. But really what we're trying to do is get to the essence of it. And it's about narrowing it down, and it's about getting to the essence, and it's about putting it, that like I could explain it's very easy to explain what you do in 3 paragraphs. It's really hard to do in 2 sentences. And that is really the work. That's the hard work, is to get to the essence of what you need to do. So to answer your question, the unique value proposition shouldn't be long. It should be a couple of sentences. And how you get there is you do your homework, right? And you do everything we just talked about. You understand who your audience is. You understand what drives them. You understand what their needs are. You understand what their fears are. You understand what your market landscape looks like. Who are your competitors? What are you trying to do? And then you kind of like connect the dots between your business, your product, what the customer's needs, and then that kind of formulates and then what your competitors are doing, and that kind of formulates your unique value proposition, right? The kind of core essence of what you're solving for your customers. And, I think the other thing I would add to the competitive set is like, you got to like define how you're different. And that's interesting, right? Because a lot of times you're in a commoditized market. A lot of times you're not that different from competitors. So that's what makes it really hard. So that's when you start getting into like, well, how do you communicate yourself? And that's where your visual identity comes into play. That's where the voice and tone comes into play. Because sometimes if it's commoditized, if everybody's selling socks, right, then what makes your sock more special than the other sock? It could be, that you're quirky and funny. It could be that you have purple and everybody else has orange. Whatever it is, you do have to kind of like get to the root and the essence of what you're trying to accomplish and get really clear on that, and then just like double down and focus on how you're communicating it.
Because especially in today's world, I feel like with social media being such a precedence, it's like you really have to cut through the mold.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just,
That's
sitting in a
totally
rut.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, you got 1 second, right?
You got to make it count.
1 second. You got to make it count.
Yeah.
You got to get that hook, right? And
Yeah.
that hook can be a variety of different things.
Yeah. And so, taking that to the next level, so you have this, so hopefully, through that, and I think, gosh, we could talk all day about how you could get that value proposition, to the point, because it's just like, I'm still thinking about our value proposition, like, do we have that
I know.
figured out?
Yeah,
It's
same.
it's like a never-ending process, I feel like, and it really does come down, and
there's 1,000 marketing agencies out there.
Yeah. And especially from an angle of, well, what is the problem you're really solving, And I think that comes
Or how do you solve it? I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, that's a part of it. Yeah. I mean, we bring comfort to hard places. Comfy stone.
That's cute.
So,
there we go.
We're a little cute. We got a little something going on. But, even despite all that, it's one thing to have something like that. It's another thing to, being consistent with it and having it out in multiple channels. And from your perspective, is so you got all this, but like, what's the strategy to get it out there? What's the strategy to keep pumping it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and it's a hard question to answer because it's so different depending on
case by case.
Case by case, right? It depends on not only what kind of company you are.
Yeah.
But it also depends on where you are and kind of your journey, right? I work with large corporations and large clients that are billion-dollar companies that have no marketing. It's fascinating, right?
Wow.
And their challenge now, I'll speak to this one specifically, of like their challenge now is they've kind of like been too comfortable.
Yeah.
And now there's like the young whippersnappers, we'll call them, that are coming in and like eating their lunch, right?
Yeah.
And so now their business is threatened.
Yeah.
Right? So in that scenario, you have to start from the basics.
Yeah.
You have to start from, they have huge products in the market. We have to go in and we have to really kind of like dig into, do they need all those products? What's the value of each one of those products? Like, what are the benefits of each of those products for their customer types? All of that sort of stuff. You kind of have to like do it again and reframe it because they've lost their way.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that sort of like work to be done. And then there's like, another like restaurant group, like local New Orleans restaurant group I'm speaking to. They have a great brand. They have a great product. They just don't do any marketing. Like, people love it. If I said their name, which I will not, but if I said their name, everybody would be like, hell yeah, I love that place. But then if I ask you when the last time you went to that place, you'd be like, oh, it hasn't been in a couple years.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a different challenge. That's a different business challenge, And so for them, I'm recommending like brass tacks. I'm recommending, oh, you have a great space for events. Well, when's the last time you reached out to the wedding planners or the event planners, or the Super Bowl's coming? Oh, well, how are you tapping into like all the brand activations that are happening here? And their answer is like, we're not. And do you have an email list? Yeah, we've got thousands of people on our email list because to get to the Wi-Fi, you have to put in the email.
Wow.
We've done all these things. So we have thousands of people on
They're
our
just
email
sitting on
list
it.
and they're just sitting on it.
Wow.
Right. So it's also about like kind of, and then they have all these locations that they're not marketing at all. And so it's also about kind of tapping into existing resources and existing things that you already have and reframing them. Right. And figuring it out.
Yeah.
Or it's, I'm trying to think of like, it's a tech product and you just got to like explain nuts and bolts marketing or digital marketing, I'll say, whether it's like, you got to get your SEO in order and you got to like do your Google search and you got to do Facebook paid ads. Like, it really just kind of depends. And I think that's really what I'm trying to say here, right? I'm trying to say is that there's no silver bullet.
Yeah.
TikTok, yeah, it's a big deal. Yes, it's the new TV, but most of my clients I don't recommend TikTok for. And it's just because it's either not the right audience for them, even though TikTok is getting wider and wider. If you look at the demographics, I am not a TikTok demographic. However, I'm on it, pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And not just because I'm a marketer, just because it's my form of entertainment, but you can't just assume that you need to do Google, Facebook ad or Google Facebook ads. That's funny.
Yeah.
Google search or
Google
that.
and Facebook ads. Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Google search or Facebook
or
ads.
Meta, yeah.
You just have to really kind of like understand where your customers are, how to best communicate with them. What assets can you really do you already own that you can tap into, and be really clear and a little bit creative.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a one-stop shop. That makes it harder for people with limited budgets and no marketing team, and that's why they outsource the stuff. But we try to stay pretty narrow and focused for our clients. Because we want to make sure that we start somewhere that can make an impact and that they really understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is all about pushing the needle. I mean, you said so many things. I'm like, I've got like 20 different notes. I'm like, I can't get everything. I just want to like, I want to get on my, I was like, hey, when do I get to be on my soapbox? You know?
Yeah.
So we'll just, change seats and you can interview me for a
Yeah,
bit. No.
happy to.
But no, I mean like, everything that you're talking about is like, I think, especially in the New Orleans market and all these New Orleans businesses that are listening to this podcast right now, it's like...
That's a New Orleans business, by the way, I'm talking about.
Oh.
A few of them.
Oh.
I'm not going to name names.
Don't name... Oh, man. No...
We'll get them on the podcast after we... We'll do the work, and then we'll get them on the podcast.
Hey, there we go. That's... but yeah, it's kind of like, the whole thing is that... which surprises me that there's a lot of B2C markets. Like I would assume, because like I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop on all these B2B markets. And I'm just thinking things like lawyers, construction, things like this that have never really delved into marketing. And, I'm waiting for that one B2B player that does set up the right, because like so many things are right now being like kind of left on the table, and there are like moments for other people to be creative with marketing and like step it up in the city. And so I'm curious to see where that
I would disagree that lawyers have not stepped it up in the city.
Well, I would say are you talking B2C market lawyers, or are you talking B2B market lawyers? Because there are B2C lawyers, personal injury lawyers, and there are B2B lawyers, which is like, insurance defense, stuff like that.
Got it.
And so the
B2C lawyers,
they've stepped it up.
Exactly.
But like the B2B, has stayed in that same,
mean,
and because, a big part of it is relationship building.
Yeah.
And a lot of people rely on that referral network and rely on that, and they don't really worry about what we just talked about today.
You know what? It's a really good point, and that goes back to that's a commoditized market, right?
Yeah.
And so how, from a brand perspective, how do you solve for that?
Yeah.
It's relationships, but the way that from a marketing and brand building perspective, it's how do you leverage your marketing communications, whatever that looks like, to build trust?
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it is hand-to-hand combat with like, network building. But a lot of it is, is building trust, building a brand. People don't put enough emphasis on the power of your brand when it comes to building trust
1,000%.
in the B2B world, right? I mean, that is something that I've spent many, many years in my career doing. And like thinking about, I'll tell you that company that I just mentioned, that where I was the global CMO of an ad tech company in New York City, we became commoditized. We weren't. We started as the entry. We created the market. We had a couple of competitors come up and compete with us pretty significantly. We became a commodity. And what I mean by that is that there was just dumb money flying around to try to get the customers, right? And then we decided, okay, well, how are we going to win? We're going to win through relationships. We're going to win by building a brand that people want to connect with. And the way we did that is we decided that we weren't selling to companies. We were selling to individuals, and we were going to drive that through emotion. So what does that mean? I'm going to say something controversial. We weren't worried about, from a B2B side, we weren't worried about lead gen. We were worried. We were focused on adding value to our customers and building content, whatever that looked like, that made them feel like we were that we knew what the hell we were talking about and that we understood things differently than our competitors did. And we focused on brand building. And people don't do that enough in B2B, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about lawyers and all of those sorts of like, areas that you can.
It's super important.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's
because
really,
like when
really
you need
important.
it, you're like, what? I don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And
so kind of a badge of pride for me with that company, which went from pre-revenue, I was employee 27, 6 years later, we had a $650 million run rate. We filed our S1 to go public. They eventually went public. We were $1 billion plus unicorn sort of business. I never did one white paper.
Wow.
And it's like kind of a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And it's because, and all markets are different. I've done plenty of white papers in my career, but for that one specifically, it was because, we decided early on and kind of like who we were as our brand identity is that we were going to market ourselves more as a B2C company and not a B2B company, which meant we were focused on brand and we were focused on like really adding value and creating content that our customers really wanted and not to just generate leads for ourselves.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that
is controversial.
That's what I'm saying. We gotta get that message out there because that's the message I can get behind.
Yeah, it's controversial, but it's true.
Yeah. Well,
and it's the right thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't do lead gen. Just to be clear.
Yes.
We absolutely should. But it's not the only thing.
It's a coordinated effort, and integrated marketing is super 100%. Important. But I could sit here and talk all day about it. Yeah. But I got to get one more thing out, and that's for you. Yeah. I know a lot of people are going to be interested in all the things that you're saying, and I know you have a special program that kind of addresses people that are like in these moments, and need help because like we kind of like talked about it, but we didn't really give away like, well, how do I do it? And really how you do it is with the right help. And so you have a program specifically for this.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
give that plug to that program.
It actually is very organic. This is content marketing, right? So so one of the things we did is we work with, like I've mentioned, we work with small startups who barely have a product in the market, and then we work with large corporations. And one of the things that I've identified is that some people don't need a lot of the work we do is a lot of like heavy, more like fractional CMO level, extended marketing team level, like retainer-based larger projects, right? But we also identify, because we listen and talk to our customers, we've also identified that sometimes you just need to get started. You just need a roadmap and a playbook. And that can come, it's definitely beneficial for like smaller startups, but it's also for people who might have like a mid-level marketing person that needs help with like a roadmap and a playbook. They just need help getting started. Or there's a big marketing organization and their day-to-day is just tapped with doing their regular day-to-day work, but they're about to launch a product and they can't find the time to get it done, right? So all of those kind of scenarios we've identified. And so we've created something that we call the Launchpad. And it's a 2-week sprint where we go in and we get really smart. First week is we get smart about your business, we get smart about your market. And the second week is we develop a go-to-market strategy for you. And that comes in many different forms. It can come in like, here's your product positioning or your brand positioning and key messages. Here's identifying your target audience. We just recently did one for an up-and-coming startup, and she was like, our target audience is product managers, right? And we were like, cool. And then we went in and we were like, you got to narrow that, right? Like then we identified that it was like product managers for these very specific companies. That's not to say that's the be all end all of her business, but that's where we're starting. And by just starting there, same thing with the restaurant group. There's 3 restaurants in the city. Let's focus on one because each restaurant, because of their location, has different customer types. Let's focus on one. Same idea. So we're going to go in and we're going to kind of help you further define who your audience is, and then we'll build you a basic like phase 1 go-to-market strategy and provide some recommendations on like just how to get started. And it's working really well. We've gotten some really great feedback. We've done, I think, 4 of them so far.
Wow. Okay.
You know, the price point is lower than doing big retainers.
Right.
The expectation is we'll continue to get business from those, right? Because people need help. But it's been super fun. And it also allows us to work with all kinds of different companies, big, awesome. Small, startups, it doesn't matter.
Well, if people wanted to get in on that program or get in touch with you, where can they do that?
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. You're the one providing all that. I'm just like, hey, what's up?
thevaultcollective.co. And my name is Lisa LaCour, LACOUR. You can find me across all of the usual suspects. And check out the Launchpad. You can go to the website and see it. Or just feel free to reach out at LACOUR at thevaultcollective.co.
Nice. And you got it here.
That's it.
Reach out.
Yes.
Make sure it happens. And we'll see everybody else on the next one. Thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Woo! Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfy Stone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfy Stone at comfystone.com and follow Comfy Stone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.